because we've been talking about Bruno. Today you would have seen Eddie Howe leave and whatnot. Do you think that's given us even more reason to go and get him because of, Newcastle have had 2 tough seasons now. Key players have gone. It looked like they want to hold on to him and it'd be a bit of hardball. But surely if Bruno's sitting there and Eddie Howe's gone, it's like, okay, with the greatest of respect, that confirms to me the 5 years we've had have been glorious, but the project is kind of done. The young players will have their time. Me, I'm 28. I kind of got to seize the present, which would obviously be making, I say short subjectively, it's actually a long drive, the trip to London. Like, do you think Eddie Howe leaving, is another, bow in our arrow?
I genuinely don't think it matters. I think if it was kind of not as advanced as it is, I think maybe it would have done so. But I think that the point is that the situation is so far along the road and Arsenal are now so close to getting there. I don't think it would have necessarily mattered if Eddie Howe stayed or not for Bruno's future. The fact that he is going, is another kind of extra element to push it, if you like, and to give Bruno that extra kick to maybe do what he needs to get done. But I think it would have, as I say, I think it would have happened regardless. It was interesting hearing, so I did a piece this morning on some of the quotes that Bruno had said before the World Cup, where he really praised the stability at Newcastle United, about the idea that, it's really important that we've got Eddie Howe and he, does a hand signal. We know what that means and there's such consistency there. And obviously that's all gone now. And the only really... It's massively gone. And so the only stable place, or the most stable place in the Premier League right now is Arsenal Football Club. There is no other more stable position, because Chelsea have got a new manager, City have got a new manager, Liverpool have got a new manager, Spurs and United have only got, managers very short in their tenure so far. And a lot of changes going on at those clubs. Whereas Arsenal, champions, they've got the longest serving Premier League manager, the only manager in the league who's got a Premier League winners medal, and you're joining a team that are looking to go and win more. So if you like stability, mate, Arsenal's the place for you.
And you've got a bunch of your Brazilian friends that I'm sure will show you to the latest restaurants, where to live, etc., etc. Exactly. You indirectly touched on something, Tom, and for me, obviously, we've got 38 games. You're probably looking at just over 50 if we go all the way in all the competitions. So I'm kind of cool with all our options. I know it's cliche to say, Tom, but everybody does get their time. Unfortunately, we're Arsenal Football Club, and we're Arsenal Football Club as winners in that. Yes, it's all about a collective. But simply put, I know it's not as easy as this. Go in training and make sure Mikel Arteta can't leave you out, whether that's tactically or you're training and playing so well. This is the kind of conversations I want. And for me, when I look at the midfield pivot, so I'm kind of excluding Eze and Odegaard and Nwaneri and all those players that could play there, but mainly the pivot. So like you said there, Miles Lewis-Skelly, Martin Zubimendi, obviously Declan Rice and Bruno. What does the hierarchy look like in that with you? Because I do think Rice and Bruno would probably be the best midfield pivot at this moment in time in the Premier League. Miles Lewis-Skelly reminded everybody of his quality. Rice and Lewis-Skelly look good. Obviously Zubi could mix and blend. I know Zubi had a poor second half of the season, but I think that's made people forget about his quality. What do you make of the midfield hierarchy in that regards?
Yeah, I think that Bruno would come in and be the immediate left eight in that team. I think he's often miscategorized as a defensive midfielder. I don't look at him as a defensive midfielder. I think he's much
Newcastle fans say he ain't got legs.
Exactly. So we'll see if that's true. But he's got excellent numbers for dribbles, for progressive runs as well. So I don't necessarily agree with the idea that he doesn't have legs, but he might not be the same as a very mobile Vitinha or João Neves, a player like that. But when you're looking at what he brings, I'm actually most excited for Victor Gyökeres more than anything, because he's an incredibly progressive player. And Victor last season suffered with not having enough balls kind of played through the lines. And I think that if there's a player that can really offer that, it could be Bruno. So having him and Martin and Eze as kind of midfield options in front of Declan Rice, who's also a very good progressive passer, is very exciting to see. And I think Miles as well offers us more and more depth. And I think he's going to have opportunities and minutes, and we're going to see him play plenty. What I want to see from Arteta next season is not just an evolution of our style with players like Bruno and potentially other fantastic forwards coming in. I want to see us really kind of rotate more effectively. So we're not running Zubimendi into the ground after the first half of the season, that Timber's not playing 90 after 90 after 90. Declan Rice is given opportunities to rest. So, yeah, I really want to see us change the squad, just tweak it. 1 or 2 players each game, that it's not the same 11 every single game. I want to see little tweaks, not forced by injury, but forced because we know it's the right decision to do from a rotational standpoint.
Out of luxury rather than necessity. And I share your thoughts in that. I know a lot of people are upset about Saliba getting injured for France. Naturally, I and you and everyone else that's got a bit of common sense would. But we've got to this point. I genuinely feel in many ways, it might even be a blessing in disguise. And I only say that because as much as it's F to say that, if it didn't happen then, it was going to happen at some point naturally with him and a lot of players, because everyone put their bodies in the line to get us over, to get us this Premier League trophy. But there is an element to rotate. As much as these players are durable and robust, at some point they're just human beings. And that's why I agree with you in that I know you can't have two Declan Rices, but if you do get Bruno in and Miles keeps performing and Zubi shows the first half of the season, it does give us a kind of footing to be able to kind of maneuver in the same logic here, there, and everywhere. Before I forget, Tom, I do want to talk about two things, yeah? A bit of a twofold question. Do you think we'll regret, or better yet, was you upset not to get Morgan Rogers? And what do you actually make of the Zolis signing?
Yeah, so I was definitely frustrated at the time. And I think it was a bit of a reality check, actually, for Arsenal about the window when they didn't get him, because seeing what Chelsea were willing to pay. I also think that maybe if they'd been a bit more aggressive earlier in the window with Rodgers, before the World Cup, they potentially also could have got him.
He'd be a gooner.
He would be. I think if they'd have gone saying, and I think that eventually they probably would have gone up to 100 million to get it done. But if they'd have gone to that quicker, maybe before the World Cup, I think that 100 million probably would have done it, especially if it was done before the Elliot Anderson deal happened, because that changed how Villa were viewing the potential price point for
flip the landscape.
But Arsenal don't do that. They don't act quickly. You know, they're very methodical, and they want to try and get maximum value for the players. And they don't want to accelerate because they feel as though that sets a precedent for Arsenal Football Club, and that, you know, future deals will be impacted by that happening. And I get that. And while Rodgers is a big miss, and I really think I was excited to see what he could have done on Arsenal's left-hand side. And yes, there's similarities with Eza, but I think he would have been more accomplished on the left than Eza is for us at the moment. And maybe Arteta would certainly more willing to use him in that position than he is with Eza. I think that for a player like Rodgers to be missed out on left Arsenal with very few, and still leaves Arsenal with very few top left-sided options to go for in this market. And so that's why the Vinny Jr. stuff, which I'll save to go on to when you want to talk about it shortly, I'm sure, is the only really obvious other big candidate for that position. Because I don't see a Kvaratskhelia moving. I don't see a Desiree Doué moving. I don't put Barcola myself in that bracket.
Neither do I.
I don't think that Jamal Musiala is really gettable unless you pay a huge amount of money. Even then, he's not been the same player since that serious injury that he suffered. You're looking at very, very few options. But I think that Zolis is really interesting because
I like him.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing not to like, right, about the Zolis deal. Cheap deal in this market, at least. 51 goal contributions last season. 7 goals and assists in 21 Champions League games for a team that often are not the dominant force in any of the Champions League games they play. I think it's a really intriguing one for Arsenal, who's got Premier League experience, of course, as well. Ironically, made his debut against Arsenal for Norwich.
Life is funny like that, Tom, man.
He ended Tomiyasu's career. I saw the clip, mate. He takes full out. He ended Tomiyasu's career. So it's amazing how things go full circle. But I'm really intrigued by this. And from what I've heard, he's impressing from behind the scenes, and the players are really, warming to him immediately. I mean, on Saturday, I'll be flying out to Barcelona and getting the train up to Girona.
Safe trip in advance.
Indeed, fingers crossed, because Spain and France at the moment are going through a lot of problems with wildfires at the moment. So fingers crossed everything does go all right for everybody that's out there traveling. Of course, those that are there indefinitely because they live there. But I'm looking hopefully forward to seeing Zolis do some magic on the pitch and show everybody why Arsenal signed him. So yeah, excited by that.
And the thing is, I'm excited about Zolis because I do feel there's an element of some of these claims that people make about a lot of football teams, but Arsenal, there's legitimacy to it. Like, I think it's fair to say, like Morgan Rogers, Vinicius, game changers, players with X factor that could take us to the next level. I also feel it's fair to say, you know what, the market looks crazy. Let's try and find some value. That being said, I do think people can be hypocritical because they say go and find these unknown guys. And what's the first thing they say? Who is that? And I also get I understand a bit of the frustration because respectfully to Zolis, you can make a name for yourself. But your problem is, we've seen a failed pursuit of several of the names you said. We just won the Premier League trophy. People want major, expensive, shiny new toys in it. So I do think that goes against him. What I like about him, I want to be wary of myself comparing him to Trossard because no two players are the same. But they're very different, but I do kind of get that vibe. I do kind of like him and what he could do. Like right now I have you as a squad player. Granted, in training and on the football pitch, if you impress, it doesn't matter who you are, Arteta is going to kind of play you. I do kind of urge fans to just kind of judge the club at the end of the window, because I feel he's getting a bit of the nonny thing in that people are judging it in isolation. Like when I've granted we had Zubamendi, but when it was just Noni and it didn't look like we was getting Eze and it was whatever with Gyökeres, people are looking at Noni a bit funny. It's not to say the frustrations aren't there, but suddenly when you get the others in, you look at it very differently. And kind of what you touched on there with the whole Norwich thing, and it is ironic. He arrived initially in this country at 19. He arrives again at 24 with some good or bad moments. I do think people downplay the psychological factors. I know he's a long way removed from this, but Rice never had it easy being a footballer. He got released by Chelsea and all of those kind of things. You know, we know about Saliba's route at Arsenal, going on several kind of loans. And there's Eze getting released. There's Gyökeres is probably the best example of a mentality monster. So there's several examples of that. And that's why I'm cool with him. As you said there, 35, 40 million euros, it's not breaking the bank. God forbid. But if it doesn't work, you give yourself a foot to stand on to move him on. Bearing in mind, Palace tried to get him last summer and it didn't kind of work out. So I like what Zolis could be. I hope we can bring some more into the football club. I wanted to ask you, are you disappointed that we haven't got any of like the major players in during pre-season? Because I am. As much as I've given Arsenal the excuses and the luxuries because I know how football works, I did kind of want some people in that pre-season because, it gets the fans giddy. But the quicker you're in, gelling with what Mikel Arteta wants you to do, the better for us.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. You know, and absolutely, I think it was up to the club to be able to get the players in. Of course, they would. You know, and we know that Mikel Arteta is very outspoken on that. It's kind of catch-22 because it's a case of, well, if you want to get the players in really early, then you're probably going to have to spend more than you really want to spend on these players.
Exactly.
Is that then going to limit you in what else you can do? Is that going to affect future deals in terms of what the expectations are in buying players? But the reality is, I think that Arsenal's squad is pretty, it's already pretty good. And I love the fact that both Kai and Victor are going to get pre-seasons, which is really important for next season. Because
especially Victor.
Exactly. Victor didn't get that last time. He joined right towards the end. And so I'm really intrigued to see that. You know, the whole Julian Alvarez story, that's very much tied to maybe Victor's future. And I've got a lot of time for Julian Alvarez, of course, but I'm really curious to see what Victor can do in his second season, for Arsenal, and if he can really kick on. 24 goal contributions last season, far and away the most of any player in our squad last season. So, I'm really curious to see if that, and with Kai as well, and how that relationship develops, and if there's something to be said about maybe the pair playing with one another as opposed to instead of one another next season in Arteta's thinking. So, yes, it's frustrating that they're, the big players like Bruno aren't there immediately, or potentially a Vinny Jr. But if it is going to be the case, I'd rather we got them than, maybe went in early and it got a player that necessarily wasn't available later on in the window that was a better opportunity for Arsenal. Are we saying, therefore, that because you can't get Bruno in before pre-season, we go and get somebody who's not as good because we can get them in earlier? Probably not.
I think that's actually a very good way of looking at it. I wanted to ask you, like, I did see rumors, I don't know for the credibility, but in theory, if Atletico Madrid was saying you can have Julian Alvarez, we'll knock some money off, but you have to give us Gyökeres, would you do it? Because I wouldn't,
You wouldn't, no.
No, I can understand the logic, but I'm a big fan of Victor, man.
So I'm completely indifferent on this. Like, it happens,
that's what I'm saying.
I'm like, if it happened, I'd be like, okay, cool. I can't wait to see Julian Alvarez play for Arsenal. But there'd be part of me that Victor's going. And the other part of me is, as I said before, I'm really curious to see what Victor can do in his second season with Arsenal. So I am indifferent. I think it's a win-win situation either way around. I think Alvarez is a better footballer than Gyökeres. I don't think that's unfair to say. But I think Victor's a better goal scorer. And if we're suddenly going to provide players like Bruno and, in a dream world, Vinicius Jr., you're adding a lot of creativity, progression, and penetration to the box. So, I'm looking forward to seeing again what Victor could do. But it's always a tough one, like, because I was always one of those that was really critical of Victor in the first half of last season. We always just didn't see it, and it didn't click. And I remember when I spoke to him in an interview that I did for FL in the second half, and when I said to him about how do you feel about the nerves, because all the talk was about Arsenal were nervous, all the nerves going on, and he said, "Is like nerves mean you care. Nerves means things mean you're human." And that was like, you'd think a footballer would just be after their media training, like, we're not nervous, we're just taking this on one game at a time. But he was like, no, nerves mean that this matters and you're taking it seriously. And I was like, way better answer than I was expecting. I definitely gained a little bit more appreciation for him after that chat.
It's a weird one with Victor because I feel if you did get Julian Alvarez, I would like Julian Alvarez to be number one. I'd like Gyökeres to be your kind of rotation option, if that kind of makes sense. Similar to a few years ago when, it's a terrible example, but when Real Madrid played all their stars, there'll be games where the stars aren't making it happen and they'll just draw for Joselu. That's what I would want to see. But then it kind of draws the conversation onto Kai Havertz, in which he divides a lot of opinion, but I think many Arsenal fans, you don't have to necessarily, he's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but you have to have an appreciation of everything he's done. He's put his body on the line for this football club. But that's not actually what I wanted to ask you. Obviously, you're not working for Arsenal, but I do look
despite what some might tell you.
Despite what some might tell you. He has a dream job of commentating on the club. He's not being paid. His bills are not being paid by Bert or Mikel Arteta. He just has an opinion that might be different to yours. But what I wanted to ask you, with the evolution of our squad, and up until this point, we have seen certain players like be key players, and then they've kind of been demoted per se. What do you think the future looks like for Kai Havertz, for Martinelli, and for Odegaard? Because forgive me if I'm wrong, they're all on quote unquote big money. I hate to have these conversations, but they're all on big money. They're key players, and they've got 2 years left. Surely Berta and Arteta, at some point, if they haven't already, negotiations have to start quote unquote around the new deal.
Yeah, I think Arsenal never like to see their players get under that 2-year threshold because it does open up a lot of uncertainty and it puts you in a more vulnerable position to lose the player for less money, and then you might be completely out of pocket in terms of what a player's actually worth. I think for Kai, certainly what I've heard is that there is a willingness from all sides to look to extend in the future. So I think Kai will stay. I hope that he does. I think he's incredibly underrated. I just really think that he is a player that people undervalue. I mean, he's now scored in 2 Champions League finals. Sadly, he didn't win the second one like he did the first. He's a big game player. He scores in big moments. And I just think that it's a really valuable player to have in the squad. Martinelli, to my knowledge, is not the same as Kai. There is not at the moment a willingness to engage in the renewal of his contract right now. And if Arsenal were to be presented with a reasonable offer, I think they would accept it for Martinelli. What that figure is, people don't necessarily like to hear me talk about valuations because I tend to be told that I undervalue them. I think Arsenal would get something between 40 and 50 for Martinelli. And that's what I think. I just think that's what Arsenal would get. That's not necessarily what I think we should get. No, it's a massive profit, but it's not necessarily what I think we should get for him, but it's what I think we would get for him was between 40 and 50. So I hope it's more, but who is going to pay the money that some people say that he is worth? That's the question.
And this is what I'm saying. There has to be a market, Tom. It's all fun and games saying sell him, look at this, look at that. And a part of me, I'm with you in that I want more money, because you could argue it's not what a player's worth, it's what you can hustle. We've seen crazy fees. You kind of want our club to get on that. I think there's a market for Martinelli, but it has to be at the right price. I think he would have a lot of offers from Europe, but it has to be at the right price. His wages don't necessarily help. We did buy him for 6 or so million, so we would make profit. I don't know if Arsenal want to, or it'd be the logical decision to sell him right now for all the Vinicius talk. It's only Zolis. So on paper, you do have a bunch of players that could move over there, but you've got Zolis who needs to kind of, bed in. You've got Martinelli and you've got Eze. I don't know where Arsenal are at with that. I did think it was either going to be either Trossard or Martinelli. If you get Vinicius, and God knows we all hope, then that kind of flips things. And the market hasn't to be there. Like the last club I saw linked with Martinelli is Roma. And I looked at it, Italian league, living in Rome, living in Italy. It would be amazing. But are they going to give you competitive wages? And are they going to give Arsenal something that makes sense? Probably not. So when you get beyond the paper talk, it's probably not the best. And also, when I accept Martinelli for what he is, I've kind of given up in that, he could play up front, he could do this, he could do that. I accept him for a tool in the toolbox. I know you're going to go backwards. I know when the game's open, you could help us. I do appreciate that you've got pace. Somehow Martinelli, despite him not being the 2022-23 Martinelli, even though his record in the Premier League sport, he finds a way to chip in with key goals. So if that's a tool in the toolbox, I'd keep him. I would say Odegaard's the one that interests me, because I saw him at the World Cup. I thought that was his mini preseason to come back and be fully fit. Obviously, last year was stop-start. I got a lot of appreciation for Odegaard, but you do have Eze, you do have Wanyeri. It hasn't been so much now, but when I've read rumours, when you get away from centre mids and left wingers and Alvarez and this guy up front, it seems that Arsenal are open to signing another creative player. Like I remember us being linked with Nico Paz. So then that would surely make them look at Odegaard a bit differently. So what do you think for Odegaard?
So obviously there was that report, you might remember earlier in the window, there was a lot of reports out of Turkey that suggested he kind of agreed terms with Galatasaray. You know, when that came out, I immediately went to somebody who I know who is obviously very close with Martin, and they were like, mate, his agent's in the US. I don't know what you're like, I don't know where this is coming from. And it kind of shows you the chaos of the transfer window and the amount of misinformation that there is, you know, out there. And you know, the sense that I got at the end of the season was very different to the sense that I get now. And I think that maybe how he performed at the end of the season, how important he was, and also during the World Cup has had an impact.